Welcome to Messy Parenting, a Catholic conversation on marriage and family. I'm Mike Hernon.
And I'm Alicia Hernon.
And this is a hopefully a conversation starter for you and your spouse about some topics, some things that we have seen or experienced. We're by far not experts, but hopefully we can share some things that will give you some insights, wisdom, and maybe some peace, or at least start an idea where you say, I don't agree with them on this, but we're going to do our own way.
That's right. So we've been married for 20 years, and we have 10 kids, or over 20 years, and we have 10 kids.
That's
and
right.
Yeah.
Ages 2 to 20.
Mm-hmm. 2 in college and all the way down to...
Our 3-year-old, I guess, now, actually. She just turned 3.
Just turned 3. Mm-hmm.
So we want to talk about a topic that some of you might be early for some of you, but I think it's never too early.
In this day and age, it's earlier and earlier.
Yeah, but dating with our kids, not us dating.
That's right.
But
fortunately, we've already been through that.
That's right. So maybe we could begin with a prayer.
Okay, so let's pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, we thank you for our listeners. We thank you for their families. We thank you for our teenagers and our preteens and our older children. Lord, we ask that you bless them all and help them to grow in their relationships with members of the opposite sex, and help us to guide them, Lord, to give us the wisdom that we need to do that. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen.
First, I think we should give our experience. Go ahead. Maybe that's what you're going to do.
I don't know. What do you think?
Go ahead. Well, what our creds, like our credentials.
Okay. Well, sorry. So we have a bunch of teenagers, right? So
we have beautiful daughters and handsome sons.
Yes, and so we have gone through situations where we've not wanted someone to date and found out they were dating. Mm-hmm. We have found out through friends and family members that Facebook statuses for our children changed. And we recently had a little relationship with one of our daughters.
I don't want to say little relationship.
Oh, well, I shouldn't say little. It wasn't a very long relationship is what I guess I would phrase.
Well, we have six daughters, 4 of whom are teenagers, 20-year-old and then teenagers, and then a son who's in college. And so we've been through, different dating things. Right. And, and our son had a very serious relationship, I would say, for about 1.5 years. And I think that was managed well. Yep. And...
So we've had a couple of our kids as teenagers entering into relationships, mm-hmm. and we've stumbled into some of this and hadn't thought about it, I think, with some of them. Thought about it a little bit in the beginning, but I think we've definitely put, over the last 6-7 years, more time and thought into it. Mm-hmm. Probably more in the more recent days, and I first want to give a shout-out to my brother-in-law, David.
Yep.
He just in spending some time, I'm a kind of person, I think we are a kind of couple that always looks for insight from other people. I feel like
talking and learning from others.
Yeah, we always feel like we're always learning, and although Dave is a little bit younger, he had some great insight, and he spent some time thinking about this. So a lot of this is from him. I found a bunch on some other websites, and some just kind of through prayer and what I saw as a need for.
But the most important thing is that we got that wisdom and then tested it out.
That's right.
So we've actually used it.
Been through a couple kids with this
right
approach, if you will.
And I think just as far as what age we're talking about.
Well, I want to do I guess we can do that first.
Yeah.
If you
So
want.
just what age we're talking about. Let me just clarify too that I really don't think that it's a good idea for kids in junior high at all to be dating. It's just stupid.
Right.
I mean, that's what I tell my girls. I say, okay, so what is it like dating in junior high? They're like, it's stupid.
Right,
it really is.
Because we want them to be parrots. We want them to, no. But
no, because I want them to realize. I mean, because they don't always believe me, but I think that they have. Like now, after they've gone through it, and then looking back, they're like, yeah, that was dumb.
Again, everyone on this podcast may have different personal experiences. We know somebody who was dating in high school and ended up marrying their high school sweetheart.
Yeah, this isn't even high school. We're talking about
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
12.
We have people different. People have different experiences and background. For us, we had kind of early on said we don't want our kids dating until the latter part of high school, maybe into college. That was what we kind of started out as our kind of assumption. And I just remember situations that were coming up, and my daughter seems to forget this now, but I remember her saying to me at one point, one of our older kids, saying, Dad, I'm so glad you didn't let us date. because I see the drama that my friends are going through.
Right.
And I think there's just something about our age and maturity that at an early age, it's just silliness.
Well, one thing that I've talked to my girls about is that if you first, I'm actually the girls and Patrick as well. Patrick is our one son. Then our next son is only 10. So so there's a big gap there. But anyway, but when they tell me, like when they're, and I'm talking about that junior high age, so in that younger grades, I just want to like keep it there. Let's just talk about like, let's jump all over the place. Let's like, so junior high, when they're younger, if they're coming to me and they're like, oh, I like this person or whatever, I think a lot of times today kids automatically jump to, oh, okay, no, so we're dating, like and it's usually like over text or it's just like Facebook, and it's just ridiculous. It's not, they're not actually, really. It's meaningless. And so my conversations with them has been, I don't want them to hide it from me. It's not like I'm going to punish you or whatever, but we'll say, so you like girls, yay, that's good. You know, that. You like boys, great. You know,
obviously opposite members.
Right. And don't mess it up by saying you're going to be dating this person.
Right.
Because if you are attracted, you know, for my daughter, you're attracted to a boy, great, and he likes you too. That's awesome.
Right.
Just be friends. Just be friends. Because if you're just friends, then it's not going to get awkward when you don't like each other anymore.
Right.
And actually, that's exactly what winds up happening, is that, you know, if they, you know, you have certain, I mean, gosh, I was 12, I was 13. I remember those extremely strong emotions, you know, that happen, but they come and go. And so you have to teach your kids, I think, to manage those emotions and not act on them all the time. Even if the world says, oh, yeah, that's what you should do. And that's a status symbol, because that's what winds up happening, too, is that it becomes a status symbol in school that, oh, they're dating someone. And then girls wind up going from boyfriend to boyfriend to boyfriend. And that becomes part of their identity. And that's so not healthy at that age.
Right. And we particularly think that, I mean, and this is maybe true for life in general, but particularly in those early days of preteen, early teen, where they really need same-sex relationships that are really strong, you know, good friendships that are strong. And it just builds up their identity of who they are.
Right.
And it allows them to just be themselves and grow in that way. And that's just, I think that's very, very important.
Right.
And we've always told them, you know, it's, and it's not just the name, oh, we're dating. It's the amount of time, it's the amount of dedication, exclusivity, all these other things that come into what does really dating look like.
Right. So I would say like in that like 6th grade to 9th, almost 10th grade, or somewhere around there. I mean, it's different for everybody because kids mature differently. But around that age, you know, until they're like 14 or 15, they really should be, if they like somebody, keep it as friends. It's less awkward. It's a lot more fun just to be friends. And if you like each other, great.
Right.
You know, just move on, you know, just be friends and concentrate and spend your energy, your emotional energy towards your girlfriends, you know, or your boyfriends, just not boyfriends, I don't call them, your male companions.
Wow.
Just spend time with the friends of the same sex, because that's what's most important.
Right.
So
and just as a little, again, I don't want to go too deep into this, but you know, again, if we know what dating is, it's investing in a relationship. Like even little things, like I had to keep tabs on, hey, who are they texting a lot?
That's true, yeah.
Who are they Facebooking? Now, it's some of these things like, is it Snapchat or Instagram? Whichever one that deletes itself. That, you know, I can't remember. Snapchat. You know, it's like some certain things, technology-wise, it's hard for you to keep a handle on. And again, we had this whole podcast on technology, but the idea is that you have to be intentional about it, because you don't want them to slide into it. They may not be calling it dating. They may not even think about it that way.
Right.
But if they're investing a lot of time in some relationship, let's make sure it's balanced.
You got to be aware of that.
Right. So anyway, so that's the when. You know, when are we talking about dating? At least for us, we've found it is much wiser to be at the far end of high school, not at the beginning when they're still, I mean, again.
Actually, what I told my son when he was 14 and he wanted to date this girl, I was like, you can't even chew with your mouth closed. Like, I'm not ready to unleash you on the world of women yet.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
And also actually emphasize to him too, you know, for boys, I emphasize to him, you need to learn how to treat women. I want to see, we will let you start dating people when I see you start treating me Not that he never treated me with that he treated me with disrespect, but I want to see you opening doors for me, helping with packages, not making me walk behind you. All of those kind of things. I'm like, when you start doing those kinds of things, then I'll know that you're ready to start dating. But until that happens, like we have a little bit more formation to do here, buddy. You know, before you.
And
move
again,
on.
as a foundational part of all of this, again, I don't want to go into detail, but we talked about kind of the growing up weekend that we do. We do certain things that help lay foundations that are hopefully prior to any dating situation, so that they understand not just the birds and the bees, but that what we're meant for, how we are made, how we are designed, and that we've talked about chastity, we've talked about modesty, that these are things that they're not coming up at the last minute like, oh my gosh, you want to date somebody? Oh, well, we have to have all these conversations.
Exactly.
It's that there's a whole culture and very thought. It doesn't have to be exactly every second plan, but that we're thoughtful and that we're intentional about that.
And I think that's really important because that's the difference between being like, super like fundamentalist about it and be like, no dating until you're 16. And then that 16th birthday, that's it. And I'm not even going to talk about it. That's not really helpful for kids, but it's more like Mike was just saying, it's creating a culture of understanding so they understand, well, this is why, honey, because dating in junior high is stupid, and because
and what does that mean?
Exactly why is that? And let's talk about that. Let's talk about your relationships with your friends and how friendships are really important, and so they have that understanding so they can embrace that with full knowledge about themselves so they can know themselves better and really feel respected. I think that's what kids are looking for. They're looking to be respected and they want to be treated like adults. They want to start being treated like adults. And so we start moving in that direction by having those conversations, not just bring down a rule.
And I'm going to bring down, so we have two contrasts. We have the world that's like date whenever you feel like it. And kind of even though it may not be a full on for your children, but almost a hookup culture, like a casual, like everybody's doing it, dating. Even if it's not
what I see it
immoral.
it's a status symbol for those kids who are dating, which is really wrong.
But then you have the counter to that is that some people among good, faithful Catholics, among conservative folks, where they react to that and they're like, dating is only reserved for when you're ready to get married. And again, just thinking of the timing part, I'm like, I don't think that's wise either. Because you know what? Dating is more, dating in today's culture needs to be more than just, now I am finally ready. Again, we'll have people disagree with us, and that's okay. But, if they're 21 years of age and they're going on their first date, that may not be the most prudential, wise place for them to begin that. And we'll go into that a little bit more. But I think it's important for us to think about this early on so we kind of have it thought out. And the more time you give yourself and think that through, because if you go back to our parents' generation, at least for Alicia and I, our parents, when they were dating, they actually dated quite often. But they weren't very intense.
They went out on dates.
They went out on dates, right.
As opposed to dating.
Right. And so today, we have missed the going out on dates in general to all we are, a boyfriend and girlfriend. And it means what? I'm not exactly sure to the kids today. But in our parents' generation, they would go out to the movies. They'd go out to dinner. They would go out to whatever with a number of people. And it was friendship dating, and it was hanging out dating, and it was more casual, and there was no expectation that this is a lifelong commitment or some intense exclusive relationship, and it was more peaceful, I think. But I don't know.
It was less pressure.
It was a lot of less pressure. Now, I'm not saying that is the perfect model, but I think when we look at this, we have to look and kind of break it down a little bit and say, there's friendship, which is the beginning of any relationship, and so maybe you're just going out with a group of friends, and it's groups going out with mixed sexes. At what point are your kids ready for that? Because in the beginning, we prefer our kids to be in single sex, for up until kind of early teens, to be with just their guy friends or just their girl, single sex. But then as they go, the kind of group situations that develop. And then if they're going out on a date,
it's kind of developed naturally.
Right. And then there's a friendship date where they're just like, hey, we're going out, we're having fun. Yeah, we're a guy and a girl, but it's not pretty intense. Maybe I like you, but it's nothing intense or serious, but then it graduates and goes deeper and deeper. And much like all the things that we think of in life, in the early stages of our parenting, it's about protecting their innocence. And then it really switches to, developing Christian maturity. And that's where I want to just kind of use this to go in to talk more about dating. Mm-hmm. Anything else with the when or the kind of timing?
Well, I think that we've, kind of established the junior high. So let's talk about, what dating, when to not date. So about when to date. So we'll go ahead and do that part now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for us, we have decided that when they're a senior in high school, right? Junior, senior high school?
Driving.
All right. Well, I guess. Well, I mean, it times
That's
up. That's
kind of how I correlate it. Yeah.
Yeah. So what we've said is that there are milestones in their lives that we want to attach significant moments to, and when they have the ability and the talent and the skill to drive,
and the responsibility
to drive, it's like, okay, this is a pretty serious responsibility that we're giving our children to drive. But it also means that they have some measure of newfound freedom.
That's right.
And we don't believe that, giving them freedom without trusting them
is wise.
Is wise. And it's just you're asking for trouble. And if it's like you're going to say, okay, you can drive, and we're going to allow you to do certain things. I mean, obviously you want to curtail with curfews and things of that nature. But on the other side, you have to realize we're beginning to trust them with some very serious things.
Right. I feel like if I can't trust them if I trust them enough to drive around, I should trust them enough to be dating somebody. Because the reality is, once they can drive, you don't know what they're doing.
That's right.
I mean, and just to be quite frank, you don't. You know? Like, you don't know where they are. You don't know who they're hanging out with because they're out there. And I don't have enough energy and to be on top of them, be helicopter parenting, be around my 16-year-old all the time. And I think that's emotionally unhealthy, too.
For them and us,
exactly.
To be at that point. So it's like you have to begin building those bridges where you're building that maturity, and you're building, and they're earning that trust, and curfews and driving and certain things, and you slowly get to that point. And maybe it's not the first instance to have their driver's license, but it's within that time frame where you're realizing it's not good for me to hold back until they're out of the house. Because other people say that, we don't want our kids to date until they go to college. And I'm like, they're typically out of your home at that point, and they're no longer under your roof.
You can't train them then.
And then you can't have those conversations.
Right.
And so we have found that point, again, where it's in their latter part of high school, when they're driving, when they're having other responsibilities, work and other things that they might be doing, that this is a very appropriate time for them to enter into that while they're still under our roof, that they can still be under our, not only just rules, but just our counsel and our wisdom as their parents.
And it's also possible that maybe you have a 16-year-old who you don't allow to drive because you don't feel like they're mature enough. Well, then they probably shouldn't be dating either. It's a kind of like goes together because when they're around that time, obviously, like we always say, it's different for everybody.
And every family's different.
But around that time, they're not only driving, but that's when they can get a job. That's when they have their own money. So it's really like this stepping stone into adulthood.
Right.
So we have taken the tact that that's when it's, hey, you want to take some girl out? Go for it. Great. Some guy's asking you out? Great, go ahead, go out and go have a good time or whatever. So there's that like friendship dating.
Right, which is more casual in a certain sense, where it's not very intense, and that's fine.
Right.
But as they enter into this, we want to be more intentional about how we talk first to our child, to our son or daughter, and talking to them about their whole life. Just looking out, because again, we're taking this as part of them becoming more like an adult, more stepping into their mature role as Christians.
So this is actually a talk that Mike, has with the kids around this age.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so what we do is we begin with a conversation about this other person, this guy that they want to date, or this guy that wants to date them, or girl, vice versa. And we say, well, talk to us about him. Backing up just a little bit, again, we talked about some of the rites of passage we've talked about. So with all my girls, we go out on a specific date, and I get them a ring, and I tell them, I made it very clear, you're not allowed to date someone or someone to ask you out on a date without my permission, nor in marriage. And this is a ring as a sign both of your chastity and your love, but also that I right now am the man in your life. And I'm going to gear this more towards the women, although we had the similar
because we
conversation.
have more girls than boys.
We do. But I mean, the same thing goes for a son as well. It's just a little bit different. So I'm going to just.
And actually, I will throw in.
Yes,
I did go out with Patrick, and we had a special before his senior year, and we went to dinner and a show, basically, and I had a little talk with him, and I said,
very similar.
And I told him, I said, I want to be the first woman in your heart. I want to be the first woman in your heart. And until, the time comes when somebody else takes my place, I want us to talk about that. And I want to teach you how, and I want you to treat me how you would treat, any woman that you love in your life. And just kind of like solidifying that relationship. And it was really great. And I felt very loved by him, by my son when we went out. And anyway.
Yeah,
so
and,
just
he felt very loved. I know that from him,
so.
And so we have that as a precursor that they have in their mind. And we've brought it up on other occasions outside of that. But that was what the kind of the more intentional part of saying, dating begins with our permission.
Right, exactly.
And so when they enter into that, they're coming to us saying, hey, there's this boy that's been pursuing me. That's the way it's happened for us, because they know that, because we've had conversations that it's been part of our family culture and values. So I ask, well, what do you know about this young man? What do you know about his family? What do you know about his faith? What do you know about his character, his values, his moral, ethical behavior? Where is he going in life? Whatever it might be. And sometimes they are like, I don't know. And I'm like, well,
go find out.
Then you need to find out. You need to go deeper. This is not acceptable at this point if you don't know some of these things. Is he a Christian? Does he believe in God? Is he practicing his Catholic faith? But then from that individual, tangible young man, or again, I'm going to just keep in the phrase of talking about it with my daughter, but we go through what is love. And not like the song from A Night at the Roxbury. And the Roxbury.
Baby,
Everyone's.
don't hurt me.
Thank you. Little backup singer
Picture us
there.
banging our heads.
But love is not a feeling. Going through all of those things. And again, I don't want to make it. I think we all kind of get what we could unpack with what love really is, and how there's a really higher standard of what love is from a Christian standpoint. But that I think we need to understand, again, this is maybe why we want to date at all. Why we actually think that dating for our kids is actually a healthy, good thing.
Yes.
Is that because, from the very beginning, God made us for communion. It was not good for man to be alone. And that idea that we are made for love and we're made to give love, that's our vocation. Our vocation as human beings is to love, to give and receive love. And in dating, it finds the beginning of a pathway towards marriage. Now, not every dating relationship, and I would hate to, I don't make sure I set that up for them, but that every dating relationship gives us an opportunity to be loved and to give love, to learn about ourselves, to help another person find out more about who they are.
Exactly.
Because, many of, and maybe in our own family, but particularly in the world, they are starving for love, and they have substitutes. They have shallow examples. They have a culture that has fed them a lot of crap. And our children can be that opportunity and that healing balm. Not that they're trying to heal everybody. That's not why they're in a relationship. But that love really is the most powerful force.
Yeah, it's just the fact that relationships can draw you either further away from God or closer to Him. There's no ambivalence there. It's
right.
Either it's a positive experience or it's a negative experience. And I think that that's what we want our kids to realize, and just realize that, hey, you can be helping people get closer to heaven.
Right.
And I hope that the person you're dating is doing the same thing for you.
Right. And then again, obviously the marriage is the quintessential example of what true happiness in the sense of self-giving love. But any vocation really is about donation of self. It's about giving yourself away. So we talk about balancing three areas in a relationship. We talk about their commitment, their communication, and their physical intimacy. And by commitment, it's kind of how exclusive, how serious they are in that relationship.
Right, as like your early dating stage, or dating in college, or dating out of college when you're really looking for somebody to marry. So those are different levels of commitment.
Like
obviously.
Either a friendship dating, more quote unquote courting, you're actually pursuing marriage, then engagement. You go through those phases, right? But that level of commitment has to be on the same level as your other areas. And they can't, all these three areas can't be out of whack. So you've got your commitment, then you've got your communication. And this is one of the things I do spend a lot of time when I talk to, particularly my daughters, but I talk to my son about this as well. But, when we go out is just the, guarding your heart. Not
right.
bearing.
It's a big deal for girls.
Yeah, because and particularly in our culture with Facebook and everything else, intimacy has been cheapened, and we need to be able to, meaning communication, just sharing your heart with somebody. And I talked to them about it. I said, look, the reality is in your first relationships, it's probably going to end in a breakup, okay? Mm-hmm. And so not that you go into it thinking this is going to be over and end and all the negatives, if you will, but realize don't throw your pearls before swine. Don't share every intimate secret, because this person, are they trustworthy? Have they earned your respect? Is there a level of communication that's appropriate for the level of commitment that you have in your relationship? Is
this information that you share going to be protected? Do you have the protection of some kind of,
deeper commitment?
Yeah, exactly.
So, so again, so commitment and communication, and then physical intimacy. And this is obviously where many of us as parents are most concerned, but it's all three that really work together. And
what makes me crazy, sometimes you watch these shows where it's like you see parents talking to their teenagers, and the parents are like, even like afraid to ask, like, well, are you sleeping together? Or whatever. It's like, it's so frustrating, because it's like, you're such an idiot. You're afraid to talk to your kid about this. You're afraid like it's something private that you shouldn't go into their lives. They're a kid,
That's right.
Like, you absolutely need to be talking to them about this. And then we as Christian parents, we just can't just be like, well, just be chaste. Well, that's really not helpful. Like, you need to be a little bit more specific, a little bit more, have that conversation, and don't be embarrassed. Do not be embarrassed to have that conversation, because the reality is that you know a lot more about this than your child does.
That's right. And we have to be bold and confident in that.
Right.
And know that we even, and just for anybody who's had failings in physical chastity when you were dating or prior to marriage or what have you, don't let that hold you back from upholding the truth. I mean, don't let the evil one undermine you and think that you can't speak with integrity and confidence about this.
You actually have more integrity and confidence,
right.
I think, because you've had that
That's
experience, and you can say, look, I mean, not that you need to tell your child all of your secrets or anything like that.
I'm not sure. I don't know if that's a wise idea.
Probably not. But anyway, but just to, and I actually had said to Patrick at one point when he was dating this girl, I'm like, look, I've been there. I know how easy it is. Right. I know how close you can come. Do not go there. But Mike has like some like hard and fast rules that we've also laid down just to help them, because they don't know. Nobody told me, don't be kissing in a dark car, at night in a dark car at like 1:00 in the morning. No one ever said to me, don't do that. That's and now, but we say that's our kids.
That's
like,
right. Yeah, we've been there.
We've been there, and it's a really bad idea.
That's right. And
now, fortunately for us, we've been there with each other.
That's right. Well, but so I mean, again, just tying those three together, and so that they realize there is a progression, and we talk about once you pass through barriers, it's really hard to unpack that. And we just talk, I mean, and again,
in all three of those areas, actually.
Yeah.
But specifically in physical intimacy, you don't want to, once you cross that line, it's very hard to go back with that person, and it's really hard to go back even in the next relationship.
That's right.
So you want to just go as slow as possible.
Right. So anyway, so we talk about those three, and they're, again, our world in the news, in the media, offers us plenty of examples of the brokenness that comes up, as well as even just in friends and other situations that come in there. Anyway, but so as we go further,
do you want to be clear about what's acceptable or whatever? Do you want to talk about that now?
Sure. I'm sorry. Well, again, one of my things that I do, particularly again with my daughters, is talk about the nature of men and how we're wired. And I think a lot of us guys know this by innate our own experiences, that men are more visual, different things like that. Men are more
get turned on in different ways,
and all those different things. And I talk to them about that. With sensitivity to that, but recognizing this is God's design. This isn't like something awful and evil. This is something that's beautiful, but it's leading us towards greater intimacy. And so just sharing with them examples of what a man sees how a woman is dressed. Again, these are conversations we've had outside of that, but also when you're together, what a man might interpret. And they're also just even on the other side, like emotional things that a woman might be subtly sending clues that a guy has no clue about.
And my role in that whole conversation when Mike says, to the girls about, like laying their legs over a man's leg, or a boy's legs, like, crossing her legs over his. And girls are like, and my daughters are like, seriously? And Mike is like, yeah, do not do that. And my role is to say to the girls, look, I know you don't understand. I know that you you don't understand men. I don't understand men. When your dad says these things, believe him, because I'm not turned on in that same way, but your dad is, and we're going to have to believe that he's telling us the truth.
Right. And
just for them to realize, because everybody, we're all coming from our own perspective. And so we think, well, I don't think that way, so why should this boy think that way? And what I'm saying to the girls is, boys do think that way. You may not understand it, but you need to trust your dad. When he's telling you these things, you need to trust him because he knows what he's talking about. So anyway, just to kind of like reinforce to the girls, I know guys are weird. We don't understand them, but you need to believe your dad. And I think it would be vice versa too. For a dad to tell his son, I know girls, we don't get how girls think, but believe your mother when she says girls will get hurt if you do blank. Right. Just trust her on that.
Yeah, and so there's this balance in what we're sharing with them, with the kind of big picture philosophy/theology, purpose of dating, love, relationships, and all of that, as well as I get into some very specific areas because I don't want them to think, oh, I didn't realize that. Like I had no one tell me. Now we have, our good friends like Jason Everett and other people out there talking about theology of the body and chastity, like they didn't when we were growing up. So maybe
there's a lot of great resources.
Right,
today.
a lot more great resources in regards to chastity and living a whole life. But when we were growing up, that didn't exist in the world. Anyway, so I do go through some very specific situations that I have personally witnessed, and I've learned now through I have a list of 22. I won't go through. I don't think I should go through all 22 of these. But it's
we can put it up on the website.
Sure. Okay. Maybe I'll do that.
Sure.
All right. But anyway, so if we look at that, we do go through things like, just as an example, if you're in our house and you're watching a movie together or you're anywhere, you're not allowed to share a blanket. And my kids are like, what? Who cares? And I'm like, no. Things happen under blankets that just wouldn't happen if you're out in the daylight. You're not allowed to be, we always send in, maybe we're giving away our secrets. Should we tell all our kids the secrets? We have spies. Anyway, but
we send in the 10-year-old spy.
That's right, because things don't happen when there are other people watching, and that's true. And for a lot of this stuff, it's like it's the hour, it's the time, it's the physical place, and it's the your solitude. If you're by yourselves, if you're
like the car, for example,
if you're alone in a car, it's like we say, if you want to talk in your car, you're not allowed to park anywhere. You can park in our driveway when our lights are on and we can see you. That's acceptable. If you want to have a private conversation. Park in our driveway and talk.
That's not a problem.
But
it has to be in our driveway, not in some secluded area somewhere.
And like making out, no, that's just not acceptable. And
you never ever lay down anywhere together. You just don't do it.
Anyway, so we're getting very
and I think that people specific. Want that. And like the whole bedroom situation.
That's right.
You are never allowed. If you're a girl, you're never allowed in a boy's bedroom, even if it's a friend. Even if it's a friend, and you're just helping them out. I had a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who has 6 boys, and she's told her boys that, your friend says, "Hey, can you come up to my room and help me move something?" Be like, "No, I can't do that." Yeah, and that's a little awkward sometimes, but it's good. It's good for them to get in that habit of, for the boys, no, I don't go into a girl's room ever.
Right.
So, and so that's one thing that we'll talk about. Yes, can they kiss each other? Absolutely. But not extended kissing.
Well, and we always, and I say this, holding hands, kissing, it's like and I say this, and I'll get into this in a second, but I say to my daughters and my sons, if they give permission. I think that we've lost some of that in our culture today, where it's just, oh, we're dating, I'm going to kiss you. And,
it's this attitude of possession that
right.
I do not like at all. That
right.
it's like, no, you know what, girls, your body belongs to you.
That's right.
And nobody should be touching you without your permission. That's just kind of like common.
Right. And even I think mostly in our secular world, they would agree with that on some level, on permission.
I know. What's crazy is that it's this whole like, my body, my choice. Oh, yeah, except when it comes to sex, then you should, let guys paw all over you.
Right. And
doesn't make any sense.
But then, consent, if you will, is not sufficient. But I want our girls to have that sense, and our guys, that there is never an expectation that you need to do this. And I want you to have the will and the character and the strength and confidence to just say no.
Right.
And, and talking to them about if you're ever at a place, again, this is another reason why we have our kids all have cell phones. If they're going out with somebody, I want them to have their own phone to get in touch with me if they ever need to get out of a situation. And we've talked about that. And we've talked about where problems occur with in these relationships with drinking and other things. And it's like, we already talked to them about drinking, but we bring it back in here because the reality is that there's so many things that can go wrong when they're inhibiting their judgment. And I shared with them, I said, when you share your heart, it is so much, your judgment is more clouded and may lead to physical things when you wouldn't have anticipated it. And so like that kind of just connecting again, the whole level of commitment, the communication, the physical intimacy, that it's not just about the physical intimacy, although that's very, very key and important for us. It's about how you share those things that will then entangle your heart, that will cloud your judgment later on. And so that's why you want to be reserved. You want to hold back. You want to guard your heart so you don't go too fast, too quickly, and that you always want to be in control. Remember the analogy we had in college? Was it the horse?
Right.
So,
riding a horse.
Riding a horse. So the idea isn't that you don't ride the horse at all. But it's that you ride the horse within full control, that the commitment, the communication, and the physical intimacy are all balanced. Otherwise, you're out of control and running off, and you can't, you run into the woods and you're going to get hurt.
Right.
But you don't want to not ride the horse at all. It's a matter of having all those balanced and in control.
And I think that the reason that it's important to talk to them about these things is because, like I'll say to my daughters, I want you to be the strong, smart girl. I don't want you to be the sweet, naive girl. Because you know what? The sweet, naive girl who doesn't have these conversations with her parents, who doesn't know about these things, she's the one that's going to get taken advantage of.
That's right.
But we want her to be I want her to be the strong, smart girl, so she can be the one that's like, yeah, I know what's going on here. Yeah, I know about drinking. Yeah, I know the kids get high. Yeah, I know that guys are going to try to take advantage of me. I'm going to be aware of that.
That's right.
And keep my guard up instead of just spilling yourself all over the place.
Right. Should I just keep wrapping this up?
Sure.
Okay. So, and then again, this is kind of the preparation that I do with our daughters. And then we have a kind of a spiritual, little protection for them, recognizing they're entering into a new phase, and just to pray with them and to be, to really recognize this. And also that quickens and gives us a greater need for prayer. But then when the young man comes over, I have a conversation with him. And again, I'm talking from the girl's standpoint. I've never. And
we're talking about somebody who they want to enter into like a dating relationship,
boyfriend, girlfriend,
not like just take her out on a date, because we've done that, and that's just like, just come and introduce yourself.
Right.
But this is like, we want to date on a regular basis, be boyfriend, girlfriend kind of thing. And they come in, and Mike has this little talk with them.
Well, and also too, we've told all the kids they need to have dinner with our family. And so that to see the craziness of our family, to see them in our family, and and it gives us an opportunity to get to know that young man a little better, or young woman. And they also see us, and they see all the people that this person is in relationship with. And so when I take in the typical situation, I don't think I'd do it with a girl, but with a boy, I want to sit down with him. And David, my brother-in-law, gave me this great analogy to kind of break the ice and start over. I say, we sit outside, and we're like, is that your car? And yeah, and say, how long have you been driving? Well, blah, blah, blah. He thinks I'm asking him because I want to see how safe he is. And how do you own your car? Is it your parents' car? And so forth. And then, would you ever let anyone borrow your car? And he says, and in this situation, he's like, I'm not so comfortable with that. And he says, would you let me borrow your car? I was like, well, if you needed to. Like, they were feeling nervous. I'm like, no, I'm not looking at borrowing your car. I said, but how would you feel in that situation? Would there be things that you would ask of somebody who's borrowing your car? And I said, my daughter is worth so much more to me than somebody borrowing my car. And I go through and talk about,
and most boys can relate to the whole car analogy.
Right. And it's a perfect analogy. It quickens their approach. And it also is disarming in the beginning, that it's not a big, big deal. And I'm not a fan. I mean, I know I've joked about it with my daughters about, I'll take my shotgun out when the guy comes over.
Scaring the crap out of somebody.
Right. And there is some wisdom to that. But
because the most boys, if you say, when dad says, I want to talk to you, they're automatically nervous. Shotgun or no.
Right.
Like, they're already nervous.
That's right. And they are when I've talked to them,
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important for us to be friendly, to be kind, to be courteous, to be respectful, and not to be condescending, but to really try to say, I'm treating my daughter with respect. I'm going to treat you with respect. So using that car analogy, I say I want to just lay some ground rules. If you are borrowing my car to have ground rules, doesn't it make sense if you're going to be taking out something that's so much more valuable? And so then what I do is I say, well, first let me just get to know you, and I ask about their life, their journey, and I ask them about their faith. What's important to them. What when you look, and I think I first shared about me and my experience and who I am and what's important to me. And I asked them, what's really important to you? Right. What do you look at?
But I think the important thing, too, is that Mike shared, my family is the most important thing in my life to me, God and my family. Right. And so this kid knows you are entering into a relationship with someone in my family.
That's right.
And I think you don't have to say, I'm going to break your legs if you hurt her. You don't have to say that, because just by saying, this is extremely important to me.
Right.
They get it.
Right. And for me, and I'm not saying this isn't for every Catholic, but for me particularly, it's just like my faith and my family are most important to me. So I share it with this young man in a very brief way.
Sure.
But I talk about the sacrifices that I've made in turning down jobs for my family. I've done different things, or I've turned down political campaigns that I worked on because of my faith, or whatever it might be. And, to kind of communicate that and then say, what do you value? So I get to know their heart. And I get to know what values to them. Because I get an insight into, are they a real serious Christian or not? Are they really practicing their Catholic faith? But then I go through, very briefly for them, the purpose of dating as I see it. And I have this sheet that I hand them. And,
it's rules.
It's rules. It's 22 rules, but I start off with kind of...
That we're going to post on the website.
Yeah, I will. I have to give credit because there are some of these that I stole from a bunch of places online. But I believe in copying and stealing everything because I believe that's how we become better parents.
And people can copy and steal from us.
That's right. Go on. Have at it. Anyway, and some of this is from... as I mentioned, my brother-in-law, David, but there's a bunch of websites I found as well. But I go through what I see dating as, and then I go through these...
So expectations are clear.
Yeah, and I go through these 12 things, and kind of as we talked about, every time you're on a date, there needs to be a plan, and you need to stick to that plan, and you need to let me know where you're at. I would always appreciate a call or a text to know all that. And I said, it's your job, not my daughter's, to get her home on time if you're driving. And there is no excuse for being late. And there is no, blah, blah. And I go through all these different things. And let me just
say that, about the whole being late thing, there was a time when one of our daughters was out on a date. They were not home in time. We called her. We texted her. She wasn't responding. And that is the worst feeling. It is so awful. And so...
I was up, yeah.
Yeah. And so
waiting.
Mike
And she was a half hour late. But
still, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And of course, part
minutes.
of this is getting the cell phone number of whatever young man or not really young woman, because usually it's the man driving, but the young man who's driving, you have to have their cell phone number.
That's right.
Anybody
and
takes your kid out on a date,
you
need to have their cell phone number, and you need an adult's number, because God forbid something happens, they get in a car accident or something like that. You need to have a way of contacting their parents. But anyway, but Mike texted the guy who took her out on a date and said, I want to talk to you. When they came, Mike went outside, and actually the young man came to the door, and Mike had a little hey.
What the heck?
What, not in a mean way, but just saying, look, this was my expectation. So it's like there's these rules, but then there's also the following up with them.
Right. And it's like anything in life, whether it's at work or anything else. It's just a matter of, you set expectations, but you need to be, particularly in the beginning, you need to make sure that those expectations are clearly understood and being abided to. And that's the. I mean, again, I don't want to go through every one of these rules, but it's important for me as the dad to communicate it to them as the young man. And according to my daughter, he actually, and now again, she may be puffing it up, I don't know, but she said he really appreciated it, and he was looking forward to has looked forward to it, and we've had conversations since. And I
think actually in this day and age, again, we have to go back to Catholic families. We have to be the ones that are making a difference in this world. So if your daughter, for dads, your daughter or a single mom can have this conversation with a young man.
That's
absolutely.
So true.
But I think that that's important to have these conversations, because maybe it's very possible there is no one in this young man's life who's giving him direction.
That's right.
And a lot of young men are craving that. And so this would probably be welcomed, and that you could be a positive male influence in somebody's life, and that's a good thing.
And if you are a single mom out there, you've got so many other burdens. I'd really encourage you to think about finding a man from your parish, or a brother, or an uncle, or somebody that can do this. Because I think there is something powerful about a young man having an older man sit down and talk to them about this.
Yeah,
I think it would be really, really hard for a single mom to have that conversation that I had with these suitors, if you will, these prospective boyfriends. But anyway, but I have that. And one of the final things I
we're going to leave you with,
leave the young man with, was, I kind of read this part. We expect you to be a gentleman, respecting, loving, and protecting our daughter at all times. She has been well loved, protected, and provided for since her birth. She is pure and has a good reputation, and we expect you to return her with the same. And, there's other little things about Facebook and about privacy and sharing confidences that we go through, but all of it ends up with that. We want you to get to know yourself better. And I talked to the guy and said, look, your school comes before my daughter. Your work comes before my daughter, because you're at this level of commitment. And I said, I don't want her to distract from you, and I don't want you to distract from her primary vocations right now. Right. And just to be that blunt, and then kind of keep up with my daughter. I mean, primarily it's through my daughter, not through this young man.
Because you have to be building their whole life, this relationship, everything we've talked about in other podcasts before this, it's building up that relationship with your child. And so this isn't like coming from out of the blue, like, oh, you want to hear about my personal life?
That's right.
No, you've always known about their personal life. You're always talking with them. You're communicating with them all the time. And so that's why it's like parenting isn't just, doesn't start when your kids are going out into the world, but you've had a relationship with them and you've had these conversations all along. And so this is no different from any of that.
Right. And so the final thought is, if not Catholics, then who? Who will rebuild how boys and girls, young men and young women are going to be interacting and relating to one another? That is how we rebuild a culture.
That's right.
We don't want to be in our little Amish community and wall ourselves off. We want to begin to influence the culture, and these are the opportunities. These are the moments, both for our children, but our ability and our children's ability to influence the culture at large. Because I really just believe that if we begin planting those seeds, again, we have a large family. We have 10 kids. We're going to have kids who are going to have multiple dating relationships. Right. That means that we and our children will influence multiple relationships. How can we do that in a most profound way so that they understand what love really means?
And, like I said before, we want all of our kids, we want them to be the strong, smart kids. We really want that to happen. So that's something that you should be aware of every time your kid is in a relationship, because you want them to be the influencer, not the one who is influenced.
That's right.
And if you have your kid, who we talked about before, like a emotional love tank, when we talked about the love languages.
That's right.
If your son's tank is filled and they know that they are loved by you and by your husband, by your wife, by your family, they're going to be less likely to go out and be seeking that approval from some young man or some woman. Exactly. And they will be able to influence the world for Christ even through these dating relationships, which for us so far, and all of our kids have broken up with the kids that they've been dating. It's all been good. We've been very little drama so far.
Right, exactly. But and again, we aren't super far down that path. We don't have any children who are engaged or ready to be married. But we've seen enough of dating relationships,
Right.
and this is some of our thoughts. And I really do. I think dating is beautiful. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be scared. But just really be intentional and thoughtful about how you're going to approach it.
Prepare your kids. Right. That's right.
And there's
Be
never too
intentional.
early to begin thinking about it, no matter what your kids' ages are. Sorry I went a little bit longer this time. Hopefully it was helpful. If you haven't had a chance, I'd really encourage you to go to messyparenting.org. We put up a survey there with the Synod on the Family, on the World Meeting of Families. We really want to find out a little bit deeper what Catholic families, what Catholic spouses are thinking about some of the hot button issues, and to get some of your reaction also that would help us with this podcast. So if you can go to messyparenting.org, you can also subscribe there or on iTunes or Stitcher for the podcast. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.